Okay, so this is the UX call for July. We moved it to the 11th because of the holiday for a lot of folks last week. So I'm going to try to share my screen here. Are you guys seeing it?
Yep.
Okay, great. Right now all I have is just the meeting notes up, but I know that Sean had some stuff he was going to show us later. So I don't know, Sean, if you want to send me what you have when we get to that part, or if you want to take over the screen, either one is fine. But if you go to the agenda link, please go ahead and sign in so we know who all was here today. I thought we would start off with just a quick recap of the UX stuff that we did at Open Apereo. We didn't actually meet last month. June would have been right after the Apereo conference. So I think we had a lot of folks that were out after the conference or just getting back, and everybody kind of consumed with Sakai 11. So we didn't have a whole lot of attendance that first week of June. We decided to just go ahead and wait until the next meeting. So the presentation that we did, I thought went really well at the Open Apereo conference, the UX group presentation. We had a pretty good turnout. And the folks that were there seemed pretty excited about, the whole concept of usability testing and how to make it quick and iterative, so that you're doing, multiple tests that are short and easy for your users versus longer, more involved tests that can take a lot of prep. So I thought the presentation itself went pretty well. I'm looking to see. Let's see, Louisa, you were there, right? I know you were in the Atlas Awards during that session, right? Yeah. Was anybody else on the call at the UX session? No? Okay. Yeah, I know Francesca couldn't be here today. There were a couple other folks who said that they couldn't make it to today's meeting. So, we also did some UX testing at the conference. Unfortunately, it wasn't very well attended. There was a lot going on at the conference, a lot of sessions happening in each time slot, and also they kind of moved our room around a little bit, and it didn't make it into the printed schedule. So I think a lot of folks didn't quite know where to find us. We did have one person come in and do some testing, and we did get some really good feedback from her. We did the testing on a script that we developed based around some of the grading rubrics farm project that we're trying to get off the ground. So I do have the script for that, and we have the recorded session and some observation notes from that one testing session that we did at the conference. And what I'd like to do once sort of the flurry of getting Sakai 11 out the door is a little behind us, is schedule some remote testing using that same script. And maybe get some folks to sign up just so we can get a little bit more feedback since we didn't get a ton of people coming in to do the testing. So if anybody's interested in helping facilitate some of those, I'm planning to run them just like we did for the virtual conference usability testing. It would all be remote. We would just kind of put out a call on the list to see if anybody wants to sign up as a participant, and then we would walk through the script online in a web conferencing situation. So is anybody on the call thinks they might want to help with that?
This is Jennifer. I'll be happy to help.
Great. Great. All right, so let me... All right, so we'll get in touch, offline to kind of figure out when to do that. I'm thinking probably it wouldn't be this month. I kind of want to wait and see, when Sakai 11 is sort of out the door, so that because I know a lot of folks' energies are focused there right now on the last bit of QA and getting that sort of thing out. So we might wait a couple weeks, maybe sometime in August, I'm thinking. So if anybody else decides that they'd like to help facilitate some of those sessions, just let me know. I'll bring it up again via email before we actually schedule anything. But that's kind of what I'm thinking for the UX testing. We also today are going to hear from Sean Foster from Western University, and he's got some mock-ups of some work that he's been doing with the Manage Tools screen to kind of combine that Manage Tools area with some of the the page order tool and the Manage Tools screen that you're combining, Sean?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. Do you want to take over screen share, or would you like me to pull something up so we can have it as part of the recording?
I just sent you a link or a copy of the latest one, if you don't mind driving for me.
Sure. Was that an email?
Yeah.
Okay, let me just check my email real quick. There we go. All right. So here we go. So this is it, and you'll have to walk me through whatever you want me to click on.
So yeah, that's so this is what I have so far. If you saw anything that I showed at Open Apereo, I haven't changed anything since there. I was hoping to have worked on it since then, but I haven't had a chance yet. So this is what I've done. As Wilma said, I've merged the Manage Tools page, what used to be Edit Tools, with the page order, and also changed it around a little bit too. So it's just not just those two pages combined together, but it's the functionality of those two reimagined together. And this is kind of a part of my bigger overall goal, where site info would be a whole bunch of different managed pages. So you would have managed participants and managed tools, and we already have the managed access, and then there would be the managed groups. And so it would just be a bunch of managed pages where you would manage all this stuff. So focusing on the one that we have here, this was just my first mock-up. Well, I guess it's the fifth one, as you can see in there's been a few iterations of it. But I'm just constantly revising it. So along the right-hand side is the list of all the available tools that are in the system. Currently, I've got them divided up into two categories. I've got them divided up by general tools and external tools, but that's just kind of a reflection of how the default is set up now with general and plugin tools. But I'm open to reworking that part. I don't have all the tools listed. I just have a sampling of them here. So just for examples, this is just static HTML that I've coded so far, just so that it gets a little bit of the look. But it's very simple. There's no code behind it. So along the right-hand side, you've got the tools. You can either click on the plus sign to add them, or some people suggested that you'd also be able to drag them in the spot. Right now, it just highlights green when you mouse over it. It doesn't actually do the adding part, because as I said, it's just static. But that was how I'd envision it, is that you would just click on it and it would put it in there. If the tool is a instance tool, such as lessons or web content, where you would be able to create multiple instances, like you can see under my instruction category on the left-hand side, you would just be able to hammer the plus button and create as many instances, and it would just keep adding them to the bottom. And then you can rearrange them on the left-hand side later, which we'll talk about when we get on the left-hand side. So still focusing on the right-hand side. So those instance tools like lessons and web content, you can click the plus sign multiple times, that'll add it, and then you can do your editing afterwards. And then at the bottom, I've added this categories area, which allows you to add categories. I know that some schools use categories that are based on the institution. I've had some feedback from different people that I've talked to, and they like the idea that I'm proposing here, which is to have the instructor be able to create a category, which would just essentially be a break or some sort of segmented heading in the menus tool, or in the tool menu on the left-hand side, that would allow you to put your tools, group the tools together in any way that the instructor would like to do so. So that would be, again, just clicking on the plus, and then you'd be able to name your category whatever you want. So if we go on the left-hand side, the selected tools is the bigger area because we figured that you're going to add tools, but you might want to edit them and visibility and stuff like that more often. So that's why I made that a bit bigger. Plus, it gives a bit more space for descriptions and stuff that we'll see in a moment. So just to give you a quick overview of what we're seeing here in the selected tools area, the first column on the left, the far left of the screen, that's just the little icon that I've chosen so far to indicate that they're all drag and drop. So that would be how you reorder any of the tools. And again, this is just a static HTML page, so the functionality doesn't exist on this mockup, but the goal would be you'd click, hold, and drag it. The arrows next to it is just a disclosure arrow to indicate that the area can be expanded and collapsed. And we'll talk about what's under when you collapse it in a moment. And then we have the name of the tool with the tool icon. And then on the right-hand side, we have essentially 4 columns. The first 3 are indicators of the different settings that you can do on your tools. So the first column is a visibility indicator indicated by the eyeball with the cross out. That's going to be used in Sakai 11 for indicating visibility, or at least I heard it was at one point. The second one is the lock icon for locking. And then the third one is the closest Font Awesome icon that I could get to any type of math notation to indicate the new math display feature that Sakai 11 has. So those are the 3 main ones that we have now with the the page order, and that's just brought on to this page. So the page order options are that part there. And then the last column is a little trash can to delete. So if you click that, it would remove the tool. And if it was not an instance tool, such as tests and quizzes, so right now my mockup's not very good where tests and quizzes are showing in both columns, but technically right now if it's on the left hand side with selected tools, it wouldn't appear on the right hand side under available tools because it would just move over. So if you hit the trash can button to remove the tool, it would just put it back into available tools. So it would move it from selected over to available tools, and that would remove it from your site. So that's kind of the overview of the interface. As Wilma did earlier, she clicked on, you can click on anywhere in that bar actually, and it'll open up. And this is where you can set your settings on each of the tools. It's a really small little checkbox there. And then, yeah, so this gives you the bigger descriptions, and these are just placeholders, especially the lock icon one. But,
nobody knows what that means.
So what this allows us to do is if we have more settings in the future for tools, we can add them here without clogging up the interface, and it gives us that room to add more descriptions or less. Each of the tools has that. If you don't mind clicking, I think it's on tests and quizzes. Oh, maybe it's settings, sorry. I do have a little move icon or move arrows thing, and right now this is something that's not done. It's just kind of sitting in but it's supposed to fill in more of that hole beside the lock icon, like just to the right of where your cursor is right now. It would fill in that area, and this was just another way to move it. You can click the arrow one at a time, and I was talking with Matt Clare to see if this would help with some of the accessibility of the drag and drop, because drag and drop for reordering can have issues with accessibility. So this would be an alternative to that, where you just click on the link of either the up arrow or the down arrow, and it would move them up or down one. And then the idea would be that if you uncheck a box or check a box in the settings,
Sorry.
that it would change the visibility in the columns there, indicating the hiding the tool, locking the tool, and the LaTeX support. So yeah, so that's kind of an overview. We still have the sort alphabetical button in the bottom, so if you wanted them to be sorted alphabetically. And I should mention the two kind of sort of grayed out entries, the instruction and the assessment. Those are an example of my categories, and so they wouldn't have any settings underneath of them. So when you click on them, they don't really show anything underneath of them. They don't even really expand right now. And then a couple of things that are missing from my mockup, either the feedback or stuff that I haven't implemented yet. One of them is when you expand it, such as we have settings expanded right now, which is just my renamed site info at the moment. It would actually put the settings beside the little gear icon there in a text field. So that's where you would do the renaming or have the option to do the renaming. So yeah, that part there would be a text field that you could rename it when you expanded it. So yeah, so that's kind of what I have right now. I'm open to feedback and thoughts or plus ones or whatever you feel after seeing this. And as I said, this isn't finished by any means, but it's just a start of what I've kind of been envisioning for about a year or two now, and I just thought I'd merge them together in a mock-up and see what the community thought, and it would be probably something that I would target probably for Sakai 12. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to be able to show this today too.
No, thank you. That's really great. I didn't get to see it in this much detail at Open Apereo, so I'm glad I got the opportunity to see a little more of it here. But yeah, I really like it, actually. I'm interested to see what other folks on the call think. Does anybody have any comments? I know Jennifer noted in the chat that categories would be nice. At her institution, they're hard-coded on the left side, and external tools just get put into the first section, so the instructor can't really do much about that. I know that there are a lot of institutions that do utilize categories, so I'm wondering if that would be something, like if the institution had categories set up, would they be editable, or could you?
Yeah, that's something that I brought forward to a small group of the Sakai people that met after the conference. And so essentially, when I was originally adding the categories to the right-hand side of available tools, I was thinking that it could be controlled kind of in three ways. One, an institution could decide that no, they don't want categories at all and just disable it. Two, they could say that the categories or tools fall into a certain category, and so as you add the tools, the categories automatically get added, kind of like RSmart used to do with their version of Sakai. And then the third option is what I have illustrated here, which was that instructors would be able to control what those where those categories are and how the tools fall under them, and the order and the naming of them. And then the feedback I got from that group was that this is probably the most flexible way, doing it the third option, or having it as an on-off rather than all three options, so that it could either be set by the instructor or not at all. And they thought that that was probably the best way to do it, but I'm still open to feedback from the community.
Any other thoughts from folks about?
This is Corey at Marist. I love it. With I believe historically, now most of you know I've only been at Marist for just over a year now, but we had the ANI categories, and moving forward, especially with our new assistant director, she comes from a Blackboard world. She was looking to customize everything, and so the fact that looking for faculty to be able to do it is really awesome. And then on top of that, even looking at it now, the change from what we have now, I mean, we're in 2.9, jumping to 11. So something like this is really exciting.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Hey there, Sean. This is Kyle. Ditto what Wilma was saying earlier. Really glad to be able to see this in a little bit more detail. This looks really great. And I love the idea of categories too. I think that gives some greater flexibility to how things display. I have a couple things of feedback. Sorry, I was furiously jotting down notes. One note I have is right now in the mockup, you have the available tools listed on the right side of the screen. Why on the right instead of the left? I'm wondering. Users tend to kind of read from left to right. And especially when making selections, you tend to see that you select something on the left or move something from the left over to the right.
Sorry, I was muted there and I couldn't talk. The reason I chose the right was because I wanted the focus to be on the left, that this is where you're managing tools. It's not necessarily where you're adding them all the time. So I felt like the selected tools was the main area where you would be coming in here to reorder things or to rename things or to change visibility. And adding was just an extra thing that you would do. So that's kind of why I put it on the right originally. Also, I thought that when you look at this, like right now it's taken out of context because I'm just looking at the page. I'm not looking at the whole Sakai interface. And which also explains some of the colors too, but that's a side point. But I felt that with this page in the context of the Sakai portal, you would have some tools on the right already from your tool menu, and then you would have this other available list. And I just felt that it was going to be too many tools side by side. And so I liked that it was on the right-hand side just to kind of separate those two lists, so it wasn't completely overwhelming. Plus that allowed the selected tools to be next to your actual tools, and then you could see those similarities and see where what that list meant because of the relationship of it, if that makes sense.
Definitely. Okay. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Yeah, having the selected tools next to the tool menu, I can definitely see that. Thank you. One other thing. So the selected tool menus is basically what's currently on the tool order screen. You know, as you may be aware, we redesigned the tool order screen for Sakai 11 to try and simplify things a little bit, to make it a little bit easier to be able to access the various options for, you know, visibility and things like that for these tools. Would you want to use the current tool order screen in Sakai 11 in this redesign, or would you want to kind of change up the design for 12?
In what way were you thinking?
So in Sakai 11, what we did was currently in Sakai 10, it sort of looks similar to this a little bit, where you have all the options to be able to select things kind of in line. I do like the drop down that you have to kind of expand out a given tool. But for Sakai 11, what we did is provide just a single settings cog to the right of each tool. There would be icons notifying you if something was invisible or if it was locked to users, but you would select the settings toggle to be able to open a drop-down menu where you could select the ability to change the visibility or the locked status, or I'm not too familiar with LaTeX, but I guess LaTeX as well. Yep, that right there. We did a little bit of usability testing with folks with this, and they were really receptive to this change for the tool order screen for 11.
So I guess the gear part is kind of mimicked in the way that I have the expanding area, I would think. Do you agree with that part?
Absolutely.
So the options under the gear are kind of under that. And as you said, it does give more room for the descriptions. My descriptions are really long at the moment and could be shortened if needed. I think this will probably need to be scaled down in some regard, especially for it to be responsive enough. And I could see maybe it collapsing maybe into more of the gear like you have for Sakai 11. I wanted the way that the reason I put the indicators on the right hand side. Sorry, Wilma, we got you jumping back and forth here. Was to be able to give that overview. But if there was a better way, you had mentioned too, Kyle, that that there would be some type of indicator.
Yeah,
For Sakai 11.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, Wilma, if you wouldn't mind going to the 11 screen there and just making a tool like invisible or locked or something. Yep. Yeah, so you get the notifications there as well.
I'm wondering why I can't lock it. I only see the invisibility one. Is that a property that's turned off?
Possibly. I know that there are
Okay.
properties that are established
Yeah.
on a tool by tool basis. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's very much, you know, in line with what you were envisioning, Sean. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of difference other than maybe the gear icon versus the expanding. But what you've got here on the screen, Wilma, is kind of what I have in my mockup. I just had more icons appearing just for demonstration purposes for my mockup. But are we talking about the same thing, Kyle? Or
Absolutely. I do like that you have the sort of description for the tool itself there. I'm wondering if that would make more sense maybe being in the actual list of available tools where, for settings where you say for managing the settings of a site, if only because if you didn't know what a tool was, if I didn't know what messages was, I would actually have to add the tool to my list of selected tools to be able to see the description for that tool.
Yeah, this is something that I've gone back and forth with a few times, and I agree. I've thought of that same case that you've just mentioned here. The thing that I decided on was that in most cases the tools are pretty self-explanatory from a naming perspective. Plus, you can add them without any type of implication of having them, or it's no time. It's pretty instant, and I envision that when you add them, it would expand it automatically. So yes, that is an extra click, but I wanted to really simplify the available tools list. But yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Cool. Well, thank you. Yeah, no, I mean, that was just the feedback I have. I think this is really great, and I think it's much needed step for Sakai to be able to incorporate both tool order and the add or edit tools, whatever that screen is called, into one thing, because right now it doesn't make a lot of sense that you have to go to two separate places to be able to do what for many people would think would be one continuous action. So awesome. Thank you very much.
No, I really appreciate your feedback, and I'm open to testing, particularly that last point too, about the descriptions. And I think that all of this because it's a change, it would need some sort of usability testing before we were to launch it. So yeah, I'm open to hearing what end users testing would do. But so far, my limited testing that I've done with just friends and colleagues, that it seems pretty positive.
Yeah, just one note about the descriptions. While it is nice to have them, this screen is really long. So I do kind of like that your list is more consolidated, that you can maybe just expand some of these to see more of a description, or bump it over and see the description. Makes for less vertical scrolling.
Yeah, that was something else that I thought of, is whether or not in the available tools list you could expand it to see the description before you added it. But again, that's just the same click as if you were to add it. What I felt was, once people are used to using the tools, they kind of ignore the descriptions because they know which tools they would like to use. And this was another reason that I really wanted to simplify it, so that after you've used it once, you know what the tool is, and the description doesn't really benefit you. So therefore, it just ends up being a lot of extra clutter on the page. So this helps simplify both the tools in the list, but also the page clarity as well. So that was just another reason why I put the description in the selected area rather than in the available area.
Awesome. So thanks, Kyle, for that feedback. Does anybody else have any other comments? Anything they'd like to share? Okay, I'll take silence for no questions. But thanks, Sean. This is really great, and I think this is something that people have kind of been stumbling with. That there is two different places. I think it does make a whole lot of sense to consolidate those two screens. So I really like a lot of what you've done here, and when you are in a place where you want to do some additional testing, I think be happy to help you coordinate some of that, or maybe this group can help coordinate some tests based on a little more of a defined script. But it would be nice to get some additional user feedback on it. I think it's going to be mostly positive. I think most of the folks that saw it at Apereo really liked it, or at least like the concept of it, even if there's some minor tweaking to be done here and there. So I think it's great.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate all the feedback that I've received and the support for this. I've heard about a lot of different people saying, "Oh, these pages need to be merged together" for a long time. So, and I thought the same thing. So I just was working on something for a personal project, and I got working on something. I'm like, "Hey, this kind of works for what we were thinking for the 2 pages put together." So that's where this mock-up came from. And so maybe I could also mention at this time what I'm kind of thinking for site info in general going forward would be at that, as I mentioned at the beginning, a lot of the pages that you see across the top of site info. If you don't mind, Wilma, switching to your 4th tab there, yeah. And a lot of these could be consolidated with like managed areas. So managed tools and tool order are the 2 pages that we're talking about for this mockup. So that would be combined together into managed tools. At Western here, we took the participants list that's at the bottom of this page that lists everybody that's in your site, and we actually have it moved into a dedicated page called Manage Participants. The reason we did that, we have a lot of larger classes here, and that could be sizes of 500 to 1,000, and a few of them that are over 5,000. And those aren't just classes, but some of the sites get that big as well. And what we were finding was that when people came to this page, site info in general, to do something, whether it was to add a group or change access or add a new tool, was they were waiting a long time for that participants list to load. So we've actually, quite early on when we moved to Sakai, one of the first things we did was to take that page and move it onto a manage participants page, which is essentially very similar functionality to the list at the bottom of the page. But my step 2 with that would be to add the add participants functionality to that manage participants page, and then that manage participants page would be the one page where you would go and control participants and add and remove and statuses and roles and stuff like that all in one page. So that would be kind of the second managed page that would be on this list. And it could also incorporate in editing class rosters, because that's also managing who's in your class or in your site. And then we have the manage groups area already, and then we have manage access. So quite a few of those are manages, and then a few of the other ones could probably be either consolidated, such as the importing, or renamed just a bit so that there's a lot of manage, and that also turns this whole page into some sort of settings-like page versus site info. I've always been very supportive of leaving site info available to students, because on pages that you use either a roster or groups, there's a lot of information here that can be used by students, but I think it would be great to have those modules eventually brought into whatever the overview or homepage of the site becomes. If it was a little bit more granular, like the JIRA dashboard, for example, where you can add widgets, and then the instructor would be able to add widgets to their overview page, and one of them might be the group visibility, or if you have groups, it would automatically appear or something like that. So this is long-term thinking, but manage tools being the first step in this process, but that's kind of what I'm thinking long-term would be turn site info into a settings page. And I need to work through this a little bit more and write it up and propose it to the community, but I thought I would just mention it here as we're talking about the management.
I like that idea. I also think maybe some of these, like import from archive, import from site, duplicate site, maybe some of that could be grouped under like a manage site content area.
Exactly. Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah.
Because we do have sort of a plethora of buttons across here. It'd be nice to consolidate and simplify it a little bit. Let me just mention for the recording, there's a little bit of stuff going on in the chat here. Let's see. Kyle mentioned that he liked the collapsed nature of the descriptions for the list of tools. Jolie mentioned that she likes the cog with options, but it'd be interesting to test that as opposed to the delete icon and see how users respond to one versus the other. We might also think about the use of these elements throughout Sakai so we can maintain more consistency across tools, which I think is a really good point that Jennifer made. And let's see. Oh, Jennifer's also saying the manage participants idea. They have folks that don't see the list below. I guess people aren't really scrolling down to see the list of users. So having the manage participants in its own area makes a lot of sense. And let's see, another comment from Kyle is that as the visual design of Sakai matures, design consistency is really critical. So, and I know there was some talk on the list about a style guide, and Kyle mentions that a style guide in an effort to unify the design of tools is really important. So I know I'm definitely in favor of a style guide. I know there were a few +1s on that one as well. So as people add things or contribute components, and it'd be nice to have kind of a, something to check against to make sure that they're being consistent with the established use of different icons and buttons and that sort of thing. Okay, sorry, I was just recapping. Anybody else? I see a couple more +1s for style guide. That's great. Okay, yep, another +1 for style guide. Well, I think this might be a really good group to help flesh out what some of those styles would need to be. I mean, since we're all sort of interested in usability and maybe kind of looking at different areas that do or don't match the rest of what's going on from tool to tool. So, maybe we might want to think about having a list or maybe something on Confluence where we're just sort of tracking some of these areas that could use more consistent guidelines. So that when a guide is developed or evolves, we kind of try to hit on all those and get to all the different pieces. Okay. Sean, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't really mean to take over the whole
No,
call today
that's
too. But
totally fine. I had you on the agenda for a reason because I didn't want to have to talk for an hour.
Okay, well that works. The other thing that I was going to mention is just a few of the tickets that I've been working on in my free time. Some of it for Sakai 11, well, most of it for Sakai 11 with the intention that I would be there going forward. The one that I've just pasted in the chat is some work that I did about a month ago. And it was something that I noticed while working on another issue, which was when you're working near the bottom of pages. So I was working on the footer, which is still unstyled, but I'm working on that, guys. And hopefully I can get that into a dot release of 11. Was that when I'm always at the bottom of the page, I quickly noticed that whenever my session timed out, the page would just go that transparent gray. And I couldn't figure out why it was happening until I would scroll up, and then I would say, oh, my session has timed out. And it wasn't showing at the bottom. And so this was just a quick fix to make that stick right in the center of your screen, no matter what page you were on. Or sorry, where in the page you were on, I should say. So if you were down, because originally it was always in the top few hundred pixels, this message would stay. So now it kind of floats wherever you are, so that it's in your face to keep your session going, so you can't miss it. Because if you click off of it, it just comes back with 1 minute less. If you don't click the blue button that's in the actual dialogue. So that was just a quick fix that I did. The other thing that I've been working on for the last couple of weeks that got submitted last week was the next ticket that I just pasted in. Oh, I should say also the timeout one did get into trunk, so it's now working in master with the hope that it'll get merged back into 11 after we get 11.0 out. But this is the work that I did just recently, which was essentially a lot of polish work. And so I went through and there's a lot of screenshots, particularly down in the attachments area, that looks at before and after of a lot of the things that I did. And so a lot of the work that I did, all the odd number ones are before and all the even number ones are after. And a lot of the work that I did was just centering things and aligning things and just tidying up some of the work that had been done with some of the menus and things like that. So this just recently got in last week into master, but again, I would hope that it would get merged back into 11, probably 11.1 or something, or one of the little minor ones that are coming out. So yeah, so the screenshots that you're looking at right now, Wilma, the odd number ones are the before, and the even number screenshots are the after in my, yeah, exactly, in the file name. And actually, this is a great one to look at right now. So to balance out the layout of the mobile view, we have sites on the right and we have tools on the left. I added an extra little tools icon. And it's just kind of like a little building blocks area kind of thing. I also noticed while working on this page, and this will be a separate issue that it didn't get fixed in this because it was out of the scope of this particular ticket, but when you're not logged in, if you click on sites, it doesn't do anything when you're not logged in. So we'll have to figure out what to do there. But anyways. And so that was the before, and then the after, I just kind of align things a little bit better. Now, I also made a change here too, where rather than the sites that weren't selected, so in this case home is selected, the sites that aren't selected, I changed them to a darker gray, or to a lighter gray than the background, but they were originally white, and that's because there was a contrast issue for accessibility that I had to deal with as well, and it's described in the ticket. But so that was a change that I made.
Yeah, I actually like that a lot better. I always thought that the white seemed to stand out more than the blue in some cases.
I think it's in my next screenshot. Is a really good example of what you're describing right now.
Yeah.
And it was this one here, and this was the case that I tested a lot with quite a few people, both friends and colleagues, and I would ask them, I would show them this, and I would ask them what site is selected right now, and I got a mix of answers. A lot of the time, they would say testing site. Sometimes they would say home, and a few times they would say the blue one, but it was mostly the testing site because it was the brightest of them. So that's another reason why I darkened it. Exactly what you were saying there, Wilma. So if you look at the new one, it's a little bit more obvious as
yeah, it fades into the background a little bit, but you can still see that it's a selection option, but it definitely doesn't jump out at you like the white. I like that a lot better.
Thanks. Yeah, so there's quite a few screenshots on this, and it just, a lot of it, like for instance, this was an example of the menu and just straightening it up a little bit so it wasn't over top of the name as much. And I think on the next one is the same for sites. And I just added a bit more spacing and equaled everything out. Yeah, so this was another one where the sites one wasn't as bad. I just straightened it up a little bit. They were also using a font weight for a number of areas in Sakai, actually, that doesn't actually exist in the font itself. So the font that we're using doesn't actually have the font weight that they were specifying. So it was kind of the browsers would have to interpret it, there's the word I'm trying to say. And that kind of this like weak, rough looking font. So I've given it a font weight that we actually have, which gives it a little bit better lines to the font themselves. This is an example in the narrow or mobile view. Not much has changed there. Another thing that wasn't addressed in this patch is to fix up those tools in that tool menu there. That'll be another fix that I have to do.
I like the little cube icon for tools. I think that's cute.
Yeah, I just needed something to balance out the sites icon that was on the right-hand side so that they were more equally weighted. And there was a little bit of an overlapping issue with some of the original bars on these screens, so I've just spaced them out. The other thing, so this is that one there is an example of when you don't use the profile tool, when you have profile turned off, it just shows the name, and it was kind of neglected. I think it was a neglected case early on because it was if you'd ever logged in as an admin on any of the servers, you could definitely see because it kind of crammed all the first and last name together, or the first name and the username together. So it separated all that out, and I've added just a little down arrow to indicate that it was clickable. That's an example of the admin. It's just unfortunate because it's showing the first name, and I think this will be another patch in the future, is giving institutions the ability to control what actually shows up for those display names, whether they want first name or last name or full name or just username. More work to be done. This was the example here that's really obvious of it being crammed together and the one half being italicized and slightly higher and all that. So I fixed that up a little bit. And I think that's everything. You made it through the 28 screenshots on that one. So thank you for letting me show you that as well. My goal is to go through a lot of the areas of Portal. So for example, as I said, I'm working on the footer. I'm also going to go through and just centering is the big thing, and aligning and spacing is what I'm doing. So it's just the polish work that I'm going through and trying to clean up some of those bars. So like the toolbar and the tools menu and the breadcrumbs and that sort of thing, just to straighten them out and space them up a little better. So let me know if you have any feedback on anything there. Thanks.
Thanks, Sean. Those are really nice. They're small changes, but all those little subtle changes add up. So it's really important work that you're doing. So I'm glad to see that somebody's kind of taken that on, because I do think it improves the overall look and feel. So thank you.
Yeah, my feelings exactly. It's just the little things that I think internally, like your users don't think about it, but I think it does affect them internally.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. Okay. We've got about 10 minutes to 12, so we're almost out of time. Don't really have anything else on the agenda. Those were our main things that we were going to discuss. I'll fill in some additional notes later because I didn't really type while I was running the session, but anybody else who has access, you're welcome to add any notes that you'd like if I missed something. Just real briefly, I see a comment from Louisa here. She has quick feedback about students about mobile view. They use split screens a lot when working on their computers. Sakai 11 will shift to mobile view when they use two split windows. They want to keep the full view and keep the tool menu on the left, not the mobile view. That's interesting. So they prefer split windows to having overlapping windows? Okay, I'm not seeing anything new from Louisa. Okay, one window is Sakai 11 and one window is a Word document. I guess I'm spoiled with two monitors. I'm always having one application over on one monitor and the other application on the other monitor. But yeah, with just one monitor, you'd have to layer them on top of each other or do a split screen like you're describing. Yeah, I don't know that there's a way to change it from shifting. Once you get down to a certain resolution, it's going to automatically go to mobile view. Is there a way to switch back and forth? Does anybody know? Sean, do you happen to know if there's a way to force it to display? And yeah, it's based on pixel width. So depending on the size of the window, that's going to determine. There's not really a way to force it to stay in one versus the other. Yeah, I guess that's just kind of one of the trade-offs for the responsive design. Maybe just kind of coach them on in working in multiple tabs like this. That's one way to switch back and forth pretty quickly, or multiple windows if they're two different applications. Okay, so just real briefly for our next meeting, our monthly time would be August 1st, which is actually the first Monday in August. Does that time still work for everybody? I mean, is that a good time, a bad time? We just keep with it? See some more chat going on about the responsive design.
For us in Canada, August 2nd first is a civic holiday.
Oh, is it? Okay, so would you like to move it to the following week? That would be, let me look at my calendar here. That would be the 8th. That would be 4 weeks from today, since we bumped this one out a week as well.
If that works okay with others.
What do other folks think? Either date works fine for me. I don't really have a preference. All right, well, I'll put a message out to the list. To see if anybody has a problem with the 8th. If not, we can go ahead and just bump it out a week. That way it'll be, 3 weeks or 4 weeks from today instead of 3 weeks. Might be a better date anyway. And if anybody has any agenda items that they want to talk about next time, feel free to let me know now, or you can email me anytime between now and next meeting to add it to the agenda. Okay, I see in the chat it looks like the 8th works for a couple people better than the 1st, so we might change that. But like I said, I'll follow up with a list email. Okay, well, I think that's about it for today. Again, thank you, Sean, for sharing all of your work, and we will probably meet again on the 8th, it looks like. So until then, have a good week, and be talking to you again shortly. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Wilma. Appreciate it. Thanks for driving too.
No problem.